Hello. Cargo owners are emerging as a powerful force in driving maritime decarbonization, especially in regulatory timelines like IMO's Net Zero framework face delays. And while the sector waits for a global alignment, market expectations, ESG requirements, and stakeholder pressure are pushing cargo owners to take proactive steps. By leveraging their influence over procurement, contracting, and supply chain transparency, the cargo owners can accelerate emission reductions and set the new standards for environmental performance across the industry. In this session, we will explore the diverse behavior among cargo owners, spanning from the ones that are leading with ambition commitments up to the others who are still finding their footing. We will highlight the practical actions that cargo owners are taking today, embedding emissions clauses in contracts, demanding verified data, piloting technologies and alternative fuel strategies, and all those to meet the expectations and avoid future cost shocks, demonstrating at the same time that the significant impact can be achieved by doing actions on the maritime decarbonization journey. And for this, I'm quite excited and honored to have with me Dr. Alexandra Ebbinghaus, who is GM Decarbonization for Shell Marine. Alexandra, a big welcome and a big thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jason, for the invitation to join the DNV Maritime Energy Transition Summit. As Jason said, my name is Alexandra Ebbinghaus. I'm the General Manager for Decarbonization in Shell Marine. So Shell Marine is a group in Shell that is supplying fuels and lubricants to the shipping sector. And my specific interest is to help customers to meet their decarbonization targets.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. And with this, I will start with the first question. Last year, we saw the delay from IMO's Net Zero framework. And while the other drivers for decarbonization remain, so we still have regional regulations, the Fuel EU and the ETS, we have ESG commercial requirements. Do you think that cargo owners will keep setting the requirements? And currently, what do you see are the main incentives and drivers for a cargo owner?
I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, for shipping companies, it remains difficult and arguable is even today more difficult to act due to the delays in the regulatory framework and also, of course, a very volatile external environment. However, sustainability pressures and aspiration to reduce greenhouse gas emissions are not going away. And shipping is an industry with assets which are operating for decades, and thus cannot afford to take a short-term view. But when you look at cargo owners, they may also face regulatory mandates such as being in scope for the EU ETS or CBAM, EU's policy tool for fair carbon emission pricing, and GHG reporting requirements. Cargo owners may have their own set of GHG reduction targets, and their customers may also be looking for lower emission products. So we are observing an increased interest of cargo owners to know their Scope 3 emissions from transport. But we should also not kid ourselves. For most cargo owners, shipping, being such an energy efficient form of transport, will represent only a small element of the total emissions. But of course, that doesn't mean that they are immaterial. So what we see is really ship owners and cargo owners have a lot in common. They are facing existing, developing regulatory mandates, want to meet own ambitions, and meet customer expectation. And of course, the other common aspect or challenge is that the willingness to pay for lower greenhouse gas emissions is very likely quite limited.
That is quite interesting insights. And I want to touch on, you mentioned both cargo owners and ship owners, and I think this is quite important because we see that the supply and the value chain is quite long. So we need to make sure we have everyone on board. So in the past, the maritime industry was not that open for cooperation, but we see this changing now. And I would like to ask you, how important do you see partnerships with ship owners, fuel suppliers, technology providers? How important do you see them being for enabling the cargo owners to implement all the strategies they have in mind in an effective way? And are there any specific collaboration models that you see working well?
I mean, implementing decarbonization strategy is not easy. I mean, you have constraints across, including affordability, availability, competitive pressures. So I do believe that you have to work together as an ecosystem. So we need to address the challenge of what can be done now as not, together, as one actor alone cannot be successful. So you really need to first know what is the size of your problem, i.e. what are your emissions, and then consider options on how to address those, which is where collaborations is most important. So when you look at the need for agreed methodologies to determine transport emissions, you think it's easy, but you need to address how to account for ballast voyages, what emission factors to use. We need to have comparable data to be shared. And this is the first start of collaboration. Industry groups like Clean Cargo and the Sea Cargo Charter are examples of setting segment-specific guidances on how to report the emissions. But once the cargo owner knows, how do you then actually provide a lower emissions transport offer? And for that, I really have one word, which is insetting, or SWE, book and claim. So the concept has been around for quite a bit, for several years yet, but let me just explain it briefly. So insetting or book and claim is where a shipping company generates low emission attributes by using biofuels in their fleet, and then makes those available to cargo owners who are looking for emission attributes to reduce their emissions, but who do not have the cargo on the vessel using the biofuel. So in essence, a shipping company banks carbon savings and applies those to the transport of cargo, where the cargo owner is prepared to pay for the emissions reductions. As mentioned, the concept has been around for several years, but the ecosystem around is also developing and maturing, and you could say it's becoming more standardized because of collaboration, because actors across the value chain are working together to make it happen. So an example, the Roundtable for Sustainable Biomaterials, RSB, is looking at certification for book and claim. Platforms like 123 Carbon offers verification, management, allocation services. Catalyst, the book and claim registry launched by the Merck's McKinney Møller Center for Zero Carbon Shipping and RMI, is aiming to connect shipping companies and cargo owners. ZEMBA, the Zero Emission Maritime Buyer Alliance, is a prominent example of an initiative that helps cargo owners access book and claim competitively. But it is also an example on how the cargo owners help both the fuel suppliers and the ship owners to progress. Cargo owners don't control the ships, the fuels, or onboard technology, but they do control demand, contracts, and the long-term signaling for change. So by creating the volumes demand and long-term contracts, they help the shipping company to justify the long-term investment on new builds, retrofits, but they also help the fuel suppliers to commit to long-term scaled productions. So ZEMBA is a very good example where this is happening today. An example of a partnership between fuel supplier, ship owner, cargo owner, technology provider, with a long-term vision and commitment, which is then the key to further success.
That is quite interesting. We have had the same outcome in our last year's maritime forecast, where we identify the importance of the flexible chains of custody. This is not only for faster adoption of fuels, but also for more efficient, from an energy efficiency point of view, bunkering operation. And this also leads me to my last question for today. We have a lot of ship owners participants today. So I would like to also ask you something from their eyes. We know that decarbonization is not easy. So we would like to hear from you, what do you see as some of the key challenges that ship owners face as they try to balance commercial objectives with sustainability goals? And how can the industry work together to address these obstacles?
Yeah, I mean, if you're just looking in the short term, you can, any ship owner can purchase biofuels like FAME to provide the lower greenhouse gas emissions, which, may be requested by the cargo owner. But that is a very short-term solution, as conventional vessels are limited to the use of fuel oil, and there's no future proving there because there's a limited supply of FAME and other drop-in fuels. But on the other hand, if you're investing in new builds with dual fuel capability to provide more fuel optionality for the future, you significantly increase the capex of the vessel. Now, if you're thinking about in the absence of global regulation today, at least, the short-term benefit of a dual fuel vessel is quite uncertain. Even if there tends to be an agreement that during the lifetime of that vessel, it will be subject to a net zero framework. So really the question should be, what can be done to reduce the uncertainty that investing in dual fuel capability is the right choice today? And my answer would be, you have to look at all potential benefits and see how the picture changes when these are all put together or stacked. So a dual fuel vessel may be more attractive proposal to lenders, making the best use of existing regulations like EU ETS and FuelEU Maritime. If you today have a two-stroke dual fuel LNG vessel with operations in Europe, you'd already have an additional income stream. Then we, as mentioned before, there's a potential of offering environmental attributes to cargo owners via insetting. And, it doesn't have to be the cargo owner of your vessel. That's the attractiveness of insetting. And then a better IMO CII rating, which could attract further charterers. The other aspect is choosing the lowest cost option. So LNG dual fuel vessels are today advantaged on the total cost of ownership, as LNG as a fossil fuel helps with regulatory compliance, but it's a fossil fuel, so it's also attractive on a fuel cost basis. So just recently I heard of a company where the sustainability team is more profitable than the freight trading team. I mean, I would definitely say this is an outlier, but there is an opportunity space where cargo owners are making the difference to the business case for ship owners to invest in the long-term decarbonization opportunities. So acting now will help both the ship and the cargo owner to be a better place when, and I say when and not if, a global net zero framework becomes reality.
That has been incredibly insightful, not only for me, I'm sure for everyone participating in METS. It has been a big honor to have you here, Alexandra, and I would like to thank you very much for a great discussion and for offering such valuable cargo owners' perspectives.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. And now back to the studio.